Hello, my name is Funk McLovin. This video and essay is part of SAHCon 2024 and marks my 4th year contributing an unhinged, Homestuck-related diatribe to you, my slavering viewers. First of all, I would like to thank Yoetz Crow and Janiah Riley for creating and producing SAHCon, as well as Andrew Hussey and James Roach for reaching out to partner with the event for the first time ever. To you, the viewers, either participating at Stuck at Home Con or watching in the future, welcome. I hope you enjoy the next hour of force-fed information crammed down your unwavering pie hole. If you would prefer a podcast version of this video to listen to in your car or while cooking or something, I've made one available for free on my Patreon, link in the description. Part 1. Prelude to the Rabbit Hole, in which theses are shared and rationales explained. Class-specting has been part of Homestuck since its very beginning. Homestuck's core appeal has always been as a fandom playground, a place people can go to make their own fan trolls and creations based on the work, and class-specting is one of the most mysterious elements to that end. 12 aspects and 14 classes to sort Homestuck's characters into, like Hogwarts houses or bending elements, except more vague and conceptual. In 2014, the extended Zodiac was released, codifying much of what had up until that point been speculation by fan theorists such as Bladekind Eyewear on Tumblr and Optimistic Duelist on YouTube. But the EZOD raised more questions than answers, igniting a fire in people to figure out just what the hell was going on. Whether it be scholars trying to apply the framework of Homestuck, such as O Pacifica, or people trying to fit the class-spect system over other media, like Will at Homestuck, love letters to class-specting have been written in digital ink spanning miles. In the year 2024, things have quieted down. Optimistic Duelist has been gone for some time, and the majority of fan creators are presently spending their efforts making visual novels and stirring up drama. Is the study of class-specting dead and gone? Have the knowledge and mysteries been plumbed from the depths once and for all? This video seeks to push class-specting forward. I, for one, am tired of the stagnation, and I am sick of being the only person discussing this topic. I want to bring class-specting out of esoterica for a modern age. I want to depart from the drab and dusty ways of old, however learned their advocates are. Reignite the fire of inspiration and temper something new with you, the listener. This video will be the first part of a series. First, we will discuss only aspect in this video, with 2 follow-ups covering class and class-spect, respectively. What I hope to achieve is an understanding of aspect so comprehensive the book can be summarily closed on the past, so we can move into the future. This is no small task. There have been many writings on aspect to date, the good, the bad, and the ugly. Sifting through this miasma has been a goose chase of only the wildest caliber. The simple fact of the matter is that up until now, discussion of aspect is stiflingly limited. No matter how broad of a scope I applied to my research, I found only one undercurrent: duality. The dualist system for measuring aspect is so ubiquitous that I couldn't find a single source that offered another kind of formula. To be fair, dualism is very broad as analytical frameworks go, but this limitation is the shackle that I want to break free from and end this era of dualist understanding. There are more numbers than 1 and 2, people. There are more spectra than you can even imagine. Let me show them to you. Part 2. Allegory of the Cave, in which shadows dance upon the walls. Alright, so before leaping cock-first into this snake pit, let's make sure our feet are planted firmly here. What the fuck is an aspect? We use that word a lot. You probably even thought of something in your brain right now, but let's wrangle that thought into a workable meaning that we can feel proud to ride into town square on. Aspect, reflexively speaking, is the general name given to the collective aspects: breath, time, doom, light, void, space, blood, life, rage, hope, mind, and heart. More on these momentarily, but aspect refers to these items and concepts in a group. They are, collectively, the building blocks of a subjective reality. You can think of them as elements, or unlike the elements of the periodic table or the elements of antiquity, earth, wind, fire, and water, these elements do not seek to describe some concrete reality as it is. Aspect could be understood as the elements of perception, the building blocks of how we interpret subjectively an objective reality, if an objective reality really exists. A notion such as this could be understood as a subjectivist philosophy. For more reading, look up Thomas Hobbes and René Descartes. As discussed, there are 12 aspects, each one denoted by a single monosyllabic word. Each one is blunt, each one is vague, and most of all, each one is staunchly opaque. They are, in essence, symbols without an original, each one representing something in terms that change with the viewer, intentionally so. There have been many attempts to make these aspects more concrete by applying other descriptions to them. This must be done with great care. One must never assume they know an aspect, for you know what they say about assuming. Instead, think of it this way. Each aspect is a pool, its depths inscrutable to the viewer. The surface of the pool is the aspect's name, named only to differentiate its nature from its neighbors. We may reach inside and know something of the pool within. We may pull out further descriptions, but we will never understand the true depth of these pools without sophisticated techniques and unnameable methods. For now, to get a more familiar and emotional sense of each aspect, let's apply each one some more words to properly define what they are associated with. Call this a word association therapy. The following are in no particular order: breath, breathing, air, wind, flight, freedom, blue, games, fantasies, void, ambiguity, nothingness, no answer, comfort, solitude, potential, black. Light, knowledge, decisions, literature, rules, luck, intrigue, yellow, brightness. Doom, death, destiny, fate, decay, entropy, programming, utility, darkness. Time, clocks, mathematics, order, red, sequence, music, coolness, industry, inevitability. Space, stars, distance, speed, size, specificity, breeding, universes, power, monochrome, hope, smiles, determination, effort, story, catharsis, white, yellow, life, abundance, growth, economy, status, wealth, prosperity, green, heart, emotions, control, facade, consciousness, relationships, skill, mind, choice, patterns, intelligence, structure, justice, games, knowledge, rage, revolution, anger, contrivance, motion, chaos, power, theater, blood, lineage, bonds, society, responsibility, care, leading, righteousness. Subjectivity has two components: stimulus and reaction. What stimulates us and how do we react to it? In simpler terms, what happens and why? In this way, each aspect has a concrete nature, something we have no control over, and an abstract nature, something we have agency over. For instance, the flow of time cannot be controlled by us, but what we do with our limited time is under our control. This is not the only example involving time, but I will be using concrete and abstract going forward. You may have noticed in the definitions some words overlap. Aspects and their associations have certain traits in common with each other, and have significant overlap in some cases. The only trait that is explicitly mutually exclusive is the aspect's name and symbol. This might not seem like much, but it is indeed everything. Searching for concrete meaning in aspects is pointless. Many have tried, but all their answers have ended in products without catharsis nor bite. That is not to say meaning cannot be drawn, only that aspect cannot be boxed away in easy-to-parse little boxes for us to peruse like items on shelves. They are, as said, symbols without originals. The more we try to tie them down, the less we are able to understand. Try to guess the true nature of an aspect would be like shaving bark off a majestic tree and saying, "Behold, the tree itself." The tree is a changing, organic thing. Its meaning does not exist inside its rings or in the molecules of its bark. It exists in what we feel, looking upon it. In the end, the question, what is an aspect, is not important at all. Each one is a viable way to both interpret the world and affect it in turn. Understanding them is to enter the mental world. Part 3. Extant Bullshit, in which names are dropped and ideas are placed carefully on pedestals. With a working understanding, quote-unquote, of aspect in development, let's move on. It's not enough to say something is something. We have to inspect what is means. In simpler terms, okay, we know what an aspect is, so what? Many people have tried their hands at working an explanation for all of this. Some have tried in vain to pin down a definition for every single aspect, and some have tried in vain to explain something that doesn't require explaining. But for the most part, everyone I read had something to say about the unfathomable depths we find ourselves up to the dick in. I have a few theorists that I'd like to put under the old microscope. Some names you know, some names you don't. Subject 1. Optimistic Dualist. First of all, wow. Total genius. OD is probably the most involved class-specting guy out there. Of all the people in this section, OD is most likely the most knowledgeable when it comes to intuiting aspect. OD remains one of the only creators who commits to the notion of total subjectivity and doesn't fall for the trap of trying to define their way out of vagueness. OD has a vast catalog of class-specting information. Some of it's corroborated by other people like Argus, but for this video I'd like to go into detail about some specific quotes and claims from 3 videos. The first video is Hero Titles and The Aspect Wheels Part 1 and 2. OD rightly states that class-spects are a hyperflexible mythology that defines, quote, reality as perceived by the livers. They also rightly compare all this to the idea of narrative, or the human tendency to rationalize chaotic events as stories. In the first video, Hero Titles, OD outlines the dualistic interpretation of class-spect, comparing it to the Gnostic notion of light and darkness, or order versus chaos, yin versus yang. Balance of forces is a strong theme. They also call class-spects a source of power, specifically to the players in Homestuck, that they use these powers of a reductive system that breaks the universe down into its constituent parts to give players agency over them. In the next 2 videos, OD goes into more detail on aspect specifically. OD goes into the aspect wheel as depicted by the Ezod, or extended zodiac, and makes several geometric comparisons. The most common geometric analysis of the aspect wheel is to identify which aspects are across from each other and identify what they have in common. This duality predates Optimistic Dualist, but they don't stop there. There are other ways to interpret dualism on the Izod wheel, such as to fold it over and treat the north-south and east-west aspects as axes on which to interpret the other aspects. For example, aspects closer to space are more spacey, and likewise for time. This is what I'll refer to as polar analysis, making time, space, and breath-blood a sort of axis system by which to measure the remaining 8 aspects. OD also makes note of how some aspects appear more than others, both in comic and in real life with regards to the Izod test. All in all, Optimistic Dualist has a firm grasp on aspect in a conceptual sense, but relies heavily on dualism. Dualism is going to come up later. I put their work first because a lot of it covers what lesser analysts are trying to ape, and a lot of other meta about Classpect is just OD's work repackaged in some fashion. Subject 2. Bladekind Eyewear. When it comes to Classpect, BQ, Bladekind Eyewear, is the first word. A lot of Optimistic Dualist's work echoes BQ's with a fresh coat of paint and more allusions to literature and mythology. Primarily, BQ was out here discussing dualism before the Izod even existed. The aspect wheel we know, as part of the Izod, comes from scholars like BQ and their theories on aspects as they existed while the comic was still coming out. Bladekind Eyewear's biggest contribution is the way they cite everything very meticulously. Bladekind Eyewear's idea of dualism, and I feel safe in saying everyone's ideal of dualism and aspects, seems to come from the following passage from Homestuck, spoken by Callie. Quote, "For instance, a hero of life and a hero of doom has aspects as different as can be. But if their classes are different enough as well, that is, one active and the other passive, remarkably, there is a chance that they could end up with very similar abilities." End quote. Doom and life are specifically drawn in contrast. They are as different as can be, and yet can complement each other somehow. It's easy to see how an idea sprang forth from this. Sadly, I don't have a lot to say about BQ because a lot of my research was stymied by the fact that some of the posts that BQ was responding to on their Tumblr simply no longer exist. Their work still does, and they're still writing today as a matter of fact, but much of the original meta is lost because of the piecemeal fashion BQ uses for discourse. In general, Bladekind Eyewear was a titan of influence, the font from which most modern ideas flow from, but a lot of the ideas they designed seem like they are trying to stretch to fit over their ideas. Confirmation bias runs rampant in this early era of analysis. Subject 3. Ouroborista. Ouroborista is a champion of digesting information. In terms of approachability, I would suggest anyone looking for a crash course on Classpect should start with Ouro. OB's theories aren't so much theories as existing theories presented in a more digestible format, such as dualism and polar analysis as discussed, but he has a firm grasp on the material, a true teacher. Most prominently, he seems to be open to the idea of subjectivity, stating in his video A Treatise on Classpecting that what we have to go on when it comes to this system is, quote, fragmentary evidence by unreliable narrators. He also goes more into Jungian comparisons than OD's Gnostic ones, but let's be real here. Jung and Gnosticism go hand in hand. Another idea seemingly unique to Ouro is his notion of aspects not as the passive elements, but as eldritch nature gods, presumably with some kind of willpower of their own. This invites comparison to Greco-Roman myth, as well as comparisons to the Trinity. Platonism and forms also come up. The idea of gods is of interest in the way that he centers self-perpetuation as a goal and the servants of certain aspects. The goal of each player is to bring more of their aspect into the universe. After this overview, Ouro goes into, you guessed it, dualism. Like OD, he crafts several kinds of polar analysis of how certain aspects relate to each other across the axes. Interestingly, his polar analysis doesn't stop at time, space, breath, and blood. He posits that there are other ways to fold the wheel, with different aspects as the poles, say, heart and mind. Though he brings up this fascinating idea, he fails to expand on it, rather frustratingly. Subject 4. O Pacifica. Of all the research I did for this video, I was perhaps never inspired more than in reading O. Pacifica's work. Though short, their analysis is both something new and something old. It is a repackaging of dualist analysis through a brand new lens. This is a summary of their aspect theory essay on Archive of Our Own. Firstly, they state that, quote, all characters have a relationship to each aspect, end quote, which seems to me to be analogous to aspects being some kind of stat system in a video game. Perhaps one goes God tier based on how high their various stats are. O. Pacifica refers to a hero's given aspect as indicative of their narrative journey. Their main theory is based around a repackaging of dualism from a biological perspective. They see aspect pairs as part of two sort of axes, aspects in an objective or fundamental form, then those same aspects in mutated, delinquent, and instrumental, ideal forms. This all gets pretty heady, and if you like to check out more, check out this writer, because their ideas come with something I feel no other aspect system seems to, an actual lens. O. Pacifica mentions that they are specifically a biologist and has strived to fit aspects over a biological analogy. I find this very fitting. Aspects are symbols, they are building blocks to stories. It's only natural that we try to stretch them over real-world fields of study. Imagine an aspect system based on, say, math, or physics, or music. You get the idea. Subject 5, Dewdrop. To those in the know, there is no name more infamous than Dewdrop. If I complained about O. Pacifica not being thorough enough, Dewdrop is far too thorough. Dewdrop is the author of and these are big scare quotes coming up, a brochure detailing his thoughts about class and aspect. I will have significantly more to say on Dewdrop in the class follow-up to this video. Dewdrop's current pamphlet has undergone 17 drafts, and finding it requires knowing a guy who knows a guy with the Dropbox link. In spite of this, his work has become, I don't want to say influential, it's more like his work has caused a mimetic cognito hazard to everyone who has read it. The brochure, as he calls it, is 166 pages full of the most head-ass footnotes I have ever read in my life, some footnotes constituting entire pages. This is the magnum opus of the most demented hyperfixated kind, and even though I disagree with nearly every droplet of digital ink, I am endlessly fascinated by his writing. I've mentioned the idea of vibes in reference to aspects. The idea that an aspect in class, by extension, can only be felt in some intuitive sense and justified post hoc. Dewdrop takes the complete fucking opposite tack, that classpect is not only real, but measurable, testable, and objective. Dewdrop's idea of classpect is completely haunting to me. He classpects not only himself as a page of time, but also his friends and family, attributing real behaviors to their classpects and attempting some kind of unhinged diagnosis of their idiosyncrasies through the lens of an underexplored lore item from a 2009 webcomic. Later in this document, I'm going to be making some lofty head-ass claims myself about the importance and utility of aspect, but I feel Dewdrop's rambling manifesto has put me in check in my urge to wax philosophical. Also, for those curious about what he thinks of aspects, he does the usual thing. It's more dualism. Moving on. Subject 6. Danny. Danny Witch of Light is a Tumblr blogger whose blog first shows up when one searches for aspects by name online. This is because, unlike other theorists, whose approaches are usually holistic, Danny chooses a more piecemeal approach. Danny has an article for each aspect, organized by a description from the EZOD, and their own description, and some keywords. They then describe each aspect through the lens of each class in turn, using standard nomenclature such as destroys or invites and such. Danny I find to be an efficient synthesis of information, as well as an intuitive person who is able to quickly and accurately describe how each aspect would interact through class. I find their contribution most useful if you're having trouble classpecting yourself or trying to identify a classpect of a fictional character. Subject 7. Classpect Anon. Classpect Anon, a personal friend of mine, is another Tumblr blogger whose work is significantly less centralized than the others discussed here. Instead of a systematic explanation and reinforcing existing ideas, CA seems to take a broader and more in-depth exploration. Recently, they have explored the notion of the nareme, a singular unit of narrative that they claim that aspects reflect. Naremes reflect the building blocks of our reality, namely matter and atoms, as the building blocks of the Homestuck reality and the way it interacts. CA also has various quizzes that serve as a more comprehensive version of the EXAD quiz. I like CA's notions, but I find them limited by, you guessed it, aspect dualism. They're more open-minded and have a more quixotic view of things, and they'll come up again later when class is discussed. Part 4. The Rolling of Sisyphus's Boulder, in which rationales are explored, destroyed, and explored again. Part 4, Part 1. Pieces of the Kintsukuroi. With the current meta, classpects and specifically aspect are somewhat bound to a dualist system. We can see there are many kinds of dualist systems, from a strictly geometric opposites-based system to a polar system. A system based on symmetrical geometry such as this suffers from a number of shortcomings that no current system addresses. Firstly, there is the inconsistency problem. In a geometric system of opposites, where time and space correlate as do blood and breath, the opposites on the existing wheel do not always represent their counterpart in the same fashion. For instance, time and space and breath and blood as two different pairs represent a complementary system. You need time and space to form existence, and you need breath and blood to be alive. They are continuums. On the other hand, what should we make of light and void? These aspects are mutually exclusive. As light increases, darkness recedes, and vice versa. They are not continua, they are spectra. Some opposites are a complementary system, and some opposites, geometrically, are mutually exclusive. Secondly, there is the variety problem. In a geometric system of a limited kind, there are only so many relationships that can be drawn. Heart, for instance, is the opposite to mind and across from void. No information can be gleaned about the relationship between, say, heart and time, as there is no strong corollary for aspects adjacent to each other. This runs against what we see in Homestuck itself. Dave, time, and Heart, Dirk, have a very important relationship that the current system has no insight into. Thirdly, there is the rigidity problem. When we are drawing geometric conclusions, it is very easy to rule out certain intuitive ideas. For example, in the current system we may think of void as being opposite to light, and while the two aspects do share themes, void also shares themes with space, even down to the aspect symbol being an inversion of space's symbol. In this way, void is also the opposite to space, but there's no accounting for this in the rigid system of opposites. Fourthly, there is the specificity problem. This is considerably more vague than the first three problems. The issue in the broad strokes of trying to make a geometric system is that an attempt to classify what evades classification, drawing conclusions about things that it is not useful to draw conclusions about. Think of it this way. Does a geometric system make you further think about the nature of aspects themselves, or does a geometric system make you further think about only that geometric system? When you construct a system, it should be harmonious with its constituent parts, but the geometric aspect wheel only serves to flatten aspects and put them into boxes. A fly pinned to a board can show us the nature of a fly, but what does that pinned, dead fly lack? For a system to suit a symbolic series like the aspects, there needs to be constructed a means to better observe these aspects in context, not arranged in a predetermined order. In short, when we're talking about the aspect wheel, we're not talking about aspects, we're talking about the aspect wheel. The four problems, inconsistency, variety, rigidity, and specificity, are issues that can be circumvented. More importantly, they can be circumvented using the system that currently exists. I have so far been critical of dualism, but I would like to be careful not to throw the paradox baby with the ecto-slime, as it were. What in the geometric system is worth preserving? The aspect wheel, as it appears in the EXAD for starters, I find actually very useful as a reference. The number 12 is very harmonious and significant. Mathematically, it is a highly composite number, containing 4 divisors, 2, 3, 4, and 6. 4 divisors to 12 is the highest ratio of divisors to natural position in mathematics. There are, of course, 12 hours in each unit of each day, and aspects share a dodecagon with the clock face that we have used for millennia. 12 Olympians, 12 sons of Abraham, 12 apostles of Jesus, 12 days of Christmas, 12 names of Hanuman, 12 battles of King Arthur, 12 months in a year, 12 atoms in magnesium, 12 cranial nerves in the human body, 12 functions on our keyboard, 12 muffins in a dozen, 12 Angry Man, Ocean's 12, 12 books in the Aeneid. Now, to be fair, it's very easy to do this for any number. Numerology is a game of coincidence, but the number 12 seems to have particular significance to both stories and to the human brain. 12 seems to come up whenever a big important number is needed, a number with some fucking gravitas. Part 4, Part 2. Music of the Spheres. You know what other system of 12 is heavily based on context, vibes, and symbolism? Music is fascinating because in spite of all the theory and mathematics involved, all music and all theory is utterly lacking when compared to the practice of music. In other words, there is no one meaning of any one note. Every relationship is predicated on context. Like notes, aspects and how they appear is predicated on context. Even aspect pairs that are identical have wildly different interactions given different circumstances. Tavros and John share themes and an aspect, but when paired with Vriska, they act completely differently. On paper, a light player is helping a breath player grow, but in both cases, the results couldn't be more different. Similar to chosen aspects, people who play music often gravitate towards a few musical keys based on which instrument they play or what pieces they know. Brass players like playing in B-flat, where pianists enjoy playing in C, but those who play mixed ensembles might enjoy the key of F between those two. People usually pick their claspect based on that vague sense of gravitation born from both circumstance and preference. Like notes, aspect have in and of themselves a nature that can be examined and identified. C is different than D. Time is different than life. Like notes, each aspect has a nature, but not a distinct meaning. Meaning can only be derived by the complex interplay of what came before and what follows, analyzed only as subjective listeners. This creates a system where meaning has near infinite permutations that change depending on the subjective listener, but can be traced back to definitive natures that are worth examining. Nature here means, for example, a note's actual pitch or an aspect's actual name and symbol, where meaning here means a note's feeling in context or an aspect's expression in a narrative. Nature is the plain fact that middle A is 440 Hz, where meaning is the way the note A makes you feel when it's played in a piece. In a simpler way, much like there is a music theory that seeks to in some way codify the interplay of notes, I wish to construct an aspect theory that seeks to in some way codify the interplay of aspects. In simplest terms, it is a meeting of the objective and subjective constructed in order to better understand the system we are participating in. Though no one has written about this to my knowledge, I didn't actually pull vibes theory out of my ass. There is in-comic precedent for the musicality of aspects, namely the oft-forgotten fray motifs. Fray motifs, according to Hussey's commentary, are battle techniques that he once intended to be part of a hero's arsenal. They are all associated with an aspect, sold in consort-run shops, and certain fray motifs incorporate multiple aspect users to function. All of them have music-themed names like Mixolydian Maelstrom or Feather Cadence. It seems these were intended for incorporation at some point, but were dropped like many other lore tidbits. Early in the comic as well, characters were often related to certain musical instruments or endeavors. This only really applied to the beta kids. John on piano, Dave as a DJ, Jade with a bass and flute, and Rose with her violin. But these remained as a general motif throughout the comic. but it's enough to get readers sniffing the direction of music and aspect overlapping. Homestuck and music are so intertwined, it's hard for me to believe that this has never been documented before. There's a whole Homestuck music wiki. Music is integral to the identity of the comic itself. Part 4, Part 3. Due Diligence of the Deranged. I'm willing to assume most people watching this video are unfamiliar with music theory. To those people, I've prepared a short primer on the topic to make the rest of this flagrant bullshit comprehensible. To those already familiar with music theory, I've strived to make this recap novel for your sake. As I said before, much like with aspects, there are 12 different notes that are utilized in Western music theory. That's it. Nearly all of the melodies and harmonies you listen to are constructed from these 12 notes. 7 of these notes are given letter names A through G, and the remaining 5, raised or lowered versions of these letter names, called flats or sharps. The space between every note is the same, called a half step or a minor second. Once the cycle of notes is completed, the cycle repeats, but higher in pitch. This cycle is known as an octave. For instance, these are both the note of C repeated in a higher and lower pitch. They are the same note, more or less, because they have pitches whose sound waves are precisely half or a 2-to-1 ratio. The science of pitch is very interesting, but we shall have to skip it for now. The 12 notes are not only arranged over one another, however. They can be also arranged into the circle of fifths, a circle where each note is listed not by half step or minor second, but by 7 half steps, an interval known as the perfect fifth. Don't worry about the numbers right now and the inconsistencies and the halves and the sevens, just worry about the word fifth. The reasons these notes are arranged in this way are myriad, but primarily it is for a quick reference to how different keys are constructed. A key, or scale, is a series of notes that form a more pleasing arrangement. Each scale has a certain number of notes that are flat or sharp, and each clockwise increment around the scale indicates an additional raised note in that key, and each anti-clockwise increment indicates an additional lowered note. In simpler terms, it's a reference to find information about the scale that is built on that particular note. The major key of C has 0 flats or sharps. The major key that begins on F has 1 flat, and the major key that begins on A has 3 sharps. Now that we have the circle of fifths, you've probably noticed that it looks just like, now you're getting it. The concept we should talk about next is the idea of interval. Interval refers to the relationship or distance between 2 notes. These intervals all have a particular quality to them that is distinctive and recognizable. For instance, the notes C and G are a fifth apart, as are the notes D flat and A flat. The musical distance between intervals are where they get their names. I've already talked about a few intervals like the minor second and perfect fifth. Don't worry about the nomenclature right now, there will be more on this later. Intervals can be either stepwise if played in order, or simultaneous if played at the same time. In sum, music as a theory is the study of intervals, notes, and rhythms. The notes and their respective relationships are very simple, but in concert, literally, they form the basis for every piece of music created in the Western tradition, from Bach to Nickelback. Part 5. The irritable tap of the conductor's baton, in which the viewer comprehends that all up until now has been but a prelude. Part 5, Part 1. So what? To synthesize what I have so far insinuated, I have several problems with aspect theory as it presently exists. First, the problem of dualism and how it limits discussion to opposite pairs. Second, how this dualism fails to describe the relationship between aspects properly. I have posited that there is instead a more complex and comprehensive way to describe aspects in a systemic fashion. Vibes theory. Much like the intervals in music, we can draw intervals between the aspects and create a complex interchange between them by identifying these intervals. This creates a new system where every one of the 12 aspects has a unique interval between itself and each other aspect around the wheel. Just like in music theory, the intervals depend on which note or aspect comes first. So C and D, major second, have a different interval between them than D and C, minor 7. Let's take an example. According to the circle of fifths, breath and life are adjacent to each other. Breath is a perfect fifth away from life, and life is a perfect fourth away from breath. We can see how this impacts characters like John and Jane. These intervals are harmonious, and we can see certain similarities between John and Jane, from being part of the same family to sharing interests like pranking. However, the perfect fourth is a somewhat dissonant interval when used in melodies. We can see this reflected in how Jane exists in John's shadow to some extent. Jane is the leader of her session, but she is stunted and broken, as is her session. This is the fashion that this analysis will take. Identifying an interval, then identifying traits that indicate how that interval informs the relationship between two characters. The interval could be said to be how an aspect interacts with another, and using this theory, you could create new characters and new interactions for your own projects, or use the intervals to identify relationships between characters in other media. Part 5, Part 2. Alchemy-like into wisdom. All aspects have two halves to the wheel, separated by the tritone at the bottom. The major series and the minor series. Aspects are either major, which appear in the major scale, minor, which appear in the minor scale, diatonic, which appear in both scales, or non-diatonic, that don't appear in any scale. Major third, major sixth, major seventh are major. Minor third, minor sixth, minor seventh are minor. Unison, major second, perfect fourth, and perfect fifth are diatonic, and minor second and tritone are non-diatonic. Diatonic could be understood as compatible aspects. These would be directly adjacent aspects and the second clockwise aspect. These aspects are similar thematically or have some form of overlap with the point of view aspect. Example, John, Jake, and Jane being reflections of the same archetype. Major could be understood as familiar aspects. These would be third, fourth, and fifth clockwise aspects. These aspects are comprehensible to the POV aspect. This does not necessarily indicate a positive relationship. Examples are John and Dave and John and Rose. Minor could be understood as the unfamiliar aspects. These would be the aspects on the leftmost side. These aspects have a relationship with the POV aspect marked by strife, either external strife to overcome together, or internal strife that causes clashes. Example, John and Terezi, and John and Roxy. Non-diatonic could be considered the alien aspects. These would be the parallel aspect, the aspect one clockwise from the parallel aspect. These are the aspects that the POV aspect has the most difficulty understanding. This does not necessarily indicate a negative relationship, simply a lack of common ideological ground. Example, John and Carcat. Major and minor are colloquially understood as happy and sad, and while this is often true, it is not always true, perhaps not even usually. Major key songs can be sad, like Hallelujah, and minor key songs can be happy, like Happy Together. Major key songs also incorporate minor chords, and minor songs incorporate major chords. A better word to describe major versus minor is light versus dark in terms of sound quality. It is the interplay of these sounds that creates music, just as it is the interplay of aspects that creates stories. Intervals also have inversions, which describes the interval if the two notes were flipped. For instance, the space between a C and a G is a perfect fifth, but when you change this interval to G and C, even though you're comparing the same notes, the distance is different. G to C is a perfect fourth. If that is the case, then it must be true that there are a total of 144 unique intervals between each note, and 144 unique intervals between each aspect. Now you might be thinking that 144 permutations of each aspect is a monumental task to tackle in one video. And it would certainly be a fool's errand to make some kind of list out of each of the permutations in turn. Part 6. some kind of list of each of the permutations in turn, in which the author does the improbable and inadvisable. The following is a project undertaken by myself and a few kind reviewers, including Cal's Calzones, Owen Davis, and anyone who contributed on Twitter, Discord, or Google Docs. Every single interval between every single aspect is listed using textual examples from Homestuck. Breath. Perfect fifth. Life. Breath views life as familiar but distant. If breath lives in the now, then life is the now, no matter how fleeting. John and Jane have a great deal of overlap, but fail to have meaningful discussions with each other. Major second, light. Breath views light as idealistic and admirable. Light measures meaning, and nothing delights the breath player more than imposing meaning on where they have blown from or are blowing to. John and Rose get along exceptionally well, and Tavros looks up to Vriska even after his betrayal. Major sixth, time. Breath views time as stalwart and reliable, but mystifying, and occasionally frustrating. John does not always understand Dave, and John has an actively antagonistic relationship with Caliborn. John is also stymied by Aradia. Strong feelings, one way or the other. Major third, heart. Breath views heart as cagey and aloof. Breath goes with the flow, and heart is concerned with whims. Still, where do Breath's whims come from but heart? Major seventh, rage. Breath views rage as amorous but strange. Breath often utilizes strong emotions and is in touch with rage, though it does not always enjoy it. Tavros and Gamzee are not close, but have a background attraction that seems to play itself out repeatedly. Tritone, blood. Breath views blood as delightful and lovely in its weirdness. The bonds that connect people are what Breath and blood have in common. John has a deep affection for Karkat, even though Karkat's antagonism, and Tavros, much like the other trolls, sees Karkat as a confidant. Minor second, doom. Breath views doom as inconsequential and strange. Why worry about the inevitable? Live in the now! John doesn't interact with Solix, nor does Tavros, even though Solix and Tavros share game partners with mutual friends. Minor sixth, void. Breath views void as comfortable and attractive. Void and Breath share an absurdist, don't worry about it mentality that instantly entangles them. John immediately works together with Roxy, developing feelings for her. Minor third, space. Breath views space as stalwart and safe. The breeze carries and space is its destination. John gets along closely with Jade, and Tavros seems to get along with Kanaya, even though they shared a paramour. A stable affection, born of equal inner peace. As with Tavros and Jade, though, this is not always a two-way street. Minor seventh, mind. Breath views mind as irritating and superfluous. Again, Breath players don't know themselves well and go with the flow, antithetical to mind players. John is actively killed by Terezi, and John later requires Terezi's help to solve a complicated problem. Tavros and Terezi are also at odds, though they are not antagonistic. Mind appears to see into Breath's blind spot. Wary companions. Perfect fourth, hope. Breath views hope as weird and off-putting. What do you make of someone who tries to put the world in a box? If whatever will be, why bother hoping about anything? John and Jake, while familial, don't speak much, and when they do, they seem off-put by each other, though they do share many similarities. Unison. Breath. Breath views Breath as confusing and flighty. Breath players don't understand what's going on in their own heads. Tavros and John don't get along, and when John meets his time clones, he seems baffled by them. Trying to understand the motion of the universe is pointless. Life. Perfect fifth, light. Life views light as annoying and pointless. Knowledge and reason are silly. Anything worth knowing is self-evident. See Mina getting bored by Arania constantly. Minor second, time. Life views time as lovely but cruel. Time makes things grow stronger. Time is the great nurturer, the cycle giver. It is also the great taker away. Aradia and Pfeffery get along, but the Countess hates Lord English, her master. Damara and Mina are at each other's throats and seem to be wrapped in mutual despisal. Time and life are fundamentally of a different stripe. Major sixth, heart. Life views heart as in the way. Life has to make tough calls. Life is in charge. Life doesn't need a bunch of emotions cluttering everything up. Still, heart is the reason to be doing anything. Dirk and Jane have a complex, distant relationship. Major third, rage. Life views rage as useful. Zealotry is quite useful indeed. The Countess put the GHB in charge of the land, after all. Major seventh, blood. Life views blood as cute. Life sees blood as its lesser form, something that doesn't bear considering in life's order. The Countess ignores the sufferer. Pfeffery doesn't seem to take Karkat seriously. Mina also seems to have a little crush on Karkat. Tritone, doom. Life views doom as romantic. Doom is death. Doom is the meaning giver. Death is the reason life means anything. Pfeffery and Solix are romantically involved. Minor second, void. Life views void as incomprehensible. What the hell is going on in Void's head? Does Void even care? Ugh. Void completely stymies life, and that annoys them. Jane and Roxy are good friends, but Jane constantly belittles her out of insecurity. Minor six, space. Life views space as its complement, the self-recognized in the other, in a good way. Life and space are at their best and worst together. See Crocker Tier Jane and Duck Tier Jade. Minor third, mind. Life views mind as reason. Though cruel, the most useful tool in life's arsenal. Notice the mind players are always working in service to the life player, the Countess. Minor seventh, hope. Life views hope as cloying and clingy. Just stop with the hope shit. Life sucks sometimes, deal with it. God. Pfeffery and Eridan, Jake and Jane. Perfect fourth, breath. Life views breath as baffling but idealistic. Breath is the freedom life craves but never seems to get. Life is bound by too much. John and Jane are mirrors in this way. Unison, life. Life views life as hot shit. Life loves looking in the mirror. Light is on top of the fucking world. Mina admires the Countess, who admires herself, though this admiration turns into distaste sometimes. Still, Jane experiences a lot of self-hate from people belittling her, showing the weakness of this vain self-esteem. Light. Perfect fifth, time. Light views time as exasperating but necessary. A bureaucratic formality in the way of the designs. An irritant, cruel. Rose and Dave bicker, but Aradia and Vriska truly go at it. Still, one can't be without the other. Major second, heart. Light views heart as vexing. Heart and its little feelings. Light resents heart for the feelings that secretly rule light like a master. Major sixth, rage. Light views rage as humorous. Rage doesn't understand shit. A blind idealist. Light has no time for rage. Though again, light resents that which secretly rules it. Major third, blood. Light views blood as amusing and fickle. Blood to light is cute. Bonds are made to be broken. What matters is prestige and knowledge. Mindfang doesn't have much thought to spare the sufferer, and Vriska doesn't have much time to spare for Karkat. Major seventh, doom. Light views doom as trivial. Doom is a formality. Light is concerned with only what comes before. It knows we're all doomed, but not yet. Tritone, void. Light views Void as whimsical and convivial. In a way, Void is the puzzle Light tries to solve. Void is SISYPHUS'S boulder, and as we know, we simply must imagine him smiling. Vriska and Equius get along, or at least Vriska is attracted to her neighbor, as do most circuits and SAHCs. Rose and Roxy also get along. If we accept Mom Lalonde as a Void player, like Roxy, we can also interpret Rose's complete disconnect from her mother to reinforce this. Minor second, space. Light views space as beloved, but esoteric. Space is fine, but space is fucking weird. Space eats bugs, Light is pretty sure. Rose and Jade don't speak much, but Kanaya and Vriska get into it. Vriska still doesn't know what the hell is happening. There's also the legendary couple, Rose and Kanaya, who get along, but only through elaborate rituals. Minor sixth, mind. Light views mind as alluring and dangerous. It's hard not to get pulled along with mind. Mind and Light are locked in battle. Circuits versus Pyropes. Rose and Terezi briefly chat on Lolar in Act 6, and seem to be on the same level and exist vulnerably together. Minor third, hope. Light views hope as childish but practical. Light is incapable of seeing hope as its equal. It thinks hope basically sucks, even though hope is a major factor in Light's fortune. Vriska dismisses Jake and Eridan. Arania uses Jake as a main pawn in her game-over plan. Minor seventh, breath. Light views breath as quixotic and whimsical. Light is skeptical of breath's actual abilities, but their attitude is infectious. Light can't help but love breath. Rose and John, Vriska and Tavros, Vriska and John. The through line is Light's intense belief in breath. Rose is the one who calls John their leader, after all. Perfect fourth, life. Light views life as bizarre but aspirational. Light looks up to life. Life is so cool. Light wants to be just like life one day, but they can't. See Mina and Arania. Unison, light. Light views Light as fundamentally smug. Light's ideal self cannot bear a mirror. The idea of Light is all that it can handle. For instance, Rose and Jasperose, Vriska and parenthesis Vriska. However, this smugness can turn into adoration, like in the case with Vriska and Mindfang. Time. Perfect fifth, heart. Time views heart as mysterious and fickle, an unreadable mask that fails to replicate. Time cannot comprehend the machinations of a fickle heart, as they do not beat in step. Dave and Dirk have a complex relationship where neither brother seems to comprehend the other. Major second, rage. Time views rage as creepy and surreal. Time does not have the language to process emotion, and rage's emotion unbound. Daves tries to connect to Gamzee, but utterly fails and sets off Gamzee into a monstrous rage. Major 6, blood. Time views blood as inscrutable yet compelling, the bonds that bind and weather time's inevitable decay and decline. Dave and Karkat are antagonistic to one another, but Dave sees this antagonism as amusement. Major 3rd, doom. Time views doom as inevitable end, the ending that gives life meaning. Aradia and Salix are close, and Salix and Dave share motifs. There is a great deal of overlap here, though their optimism is different in degree. Major 7, void. Time views void as strange and alien. What is the nature of nothingness to they who measure the somethingness? Aradia is disgusted by Equius and Dave in spite of blood relation, seems to have little to say about Roxy. Tritone, space. Time views space as unpredictable and weird. This can manifest in close friendship like with Dave and Jade, or as the bitter hatred like with Calliope and Caliborn. In either case, there exists a curiosity and attraction, for better or worse. Minor 2nd, mind. Time views mind similarly to heart, mysterious and fickle, but more regimented and incomprehensible. The filtering of the inner world with the material world. Dave and Terezi both share a sense of humor and are able to coordinate complicated plans together. Minor 6th, hope. Time views hope in a similar regard to light. Why measure what's inevitable? Why put bets on the immutable? Dave does not interact with Jake, and Aradia does not interact with Aridin in any significant capacity. Minor third, breath. Time views breath as free but indecisive, an ideal to strive for, a breeze you carry onward. Aradia and Tavros, as well as Dave and John, are bosom buddies, friends to the end, unshakably intertwined. Minor 7, life. Time views life as fascinating but alienating, intrigued by the motion of life and its cycles. It idealizes death in a cosmic dance. Dave views Jane at a distance but is obviously attracted to her. Aradia and Theferi share a paramour in common. Damara and Mina have a clash that seems at least somewhat based in class-based rivalry. Time and life are expressions of the same forces from different levels of resource. Perfect fourth, light. Time views light as baffling and pointless. Why measure the movement of the spheres if they simply are? What will come to pass will come in time. Aradia feels hatred towards Vriska, who tries to bring about pointless idealism. Dave and Rose, while connected, rarely are talking about the same thing. Unison, time. Time views time as the primary force of the universe. Without it, there would be no motion, no ability to progress, no turning of the page, no whisper on the breeze. Time is the reliable clockwork that undergirds the world. Dave and Aradia both get along with their time clones and experience a mutual understanding of each other intuitively. Heart. Perfect fifth, rage. Heart views rage as pleasant and sympathetic. Rage and heart work in harmony. They're both expressions of the ego's emotions. Mulin and Kurlos are the closest of friends, though sometimes that is not to Mulin's advantage. Major second, blood. Heart views blood as attractive and nurturing. Heart loves blood as nourishment. The disciple falls for the sufferer as Nepeta falls for Karkat. It is not always destined for success or even reciprocity, but it is destined for fulfillment. Major sixth, doom. Heart views doom as blank. Doom is inevitable, and the inevitable is of no interest. Heart deals in uncertainty and conviction, not certainty and inevitability. Dirk nor Nepeta have any significant bond with doom bound. Major third, void. Heart views void as incomplete and strange, but inescapably alluring. Void is the great creeping nihilism that Heart is running from. Void is proof positive that Heart's sense of self is fragile and transient. Heart, the ego, cannot face its own destruction. Roxy and Dirk nominally get along, but Dirk appears to have no idea how to factor Roxy into his plans, or have any insight into her mental state. Equius and Nepeta are famously Moirails. When Equius and Hal combine, they get along, but seem to be at odds. It's a harmonious imbalance. Major 7, space. Heart views space as neutral and overarching. Space is of little emotional importance to a Heart player. They have no notion of the ocean they swim in. Dirk views Jade as dangerous but ultimately able to be circumvented. Also Callie versus Dirk in the epilogues. Tritone, mind. Heart views mind as idealistic and mysterious. The mind is the layer that Heart cannot penetrate. It is a total mystery to them. They cannot step out from behind their own perspective. When Brain Ghost Dirk appears before Terezi, Dirk quickly dismisses her attempts to find out about him. He is uninterested and finds her obtrusive. Minor second, hope. Heart views hope as achingly idealistic but incomprehensible. Hope is the light at the end of the tunnel for Heart. Dirk is obsessed with Jake during their relationship to the point of alienating Jake. Minor sixth, breath. Heart views breath as irritating and pointless. Going with the flow produces nothing of value. Carpe diem. Dirk is dismissive of John in every case he meets him. Minor third, life. Heart views life as a force to be corralled. Life is a big fucking mess, and Heart believes it has the mop. Heart, though fickle, is ready to face life's challenges and process the feelings. Dirk, more than anyone, meets Jane on her level, and appears to be the only one able to get through her thick fucking skull. Minor seventh, light. Heart views light as a utilitarian. Light, to the heartbound, is a tool. Luck does not have a force to be harnessed, but a law of nature to be studied. It is a caged animal that can provide great insight into itself. Dirk views Rose as a tool and a rival. Perfect fourth, time. Heart views time as routine and droll. Time acts upon Heart, but Heart does not know how to act upon time in return. Indecision only becomes a vice with time spent deciding. Dirk and Bro have no idea how to connect with either version of Dave, but understand they are connected. There's also Devepida. Unison, Heart. Heart views Heart as the enemy, the dog growling at his reflection, the self recognizing the self in the other. Heart's relationship to their inevitably fractured selves is a stultifying misery. They fundamentally despise themselves and are unable to self-construct like mind or breath. Agonizing existence. Dirk and Hal are sources of mental anguish, more than any other self-same pair.
Rage. Perfect fifth. Blood. Rage views blood as stalwart and potent. Purple bloods understand the importance of red bloods. Gamzee and Karkat, the grand high blood of the sufferer. They recognize this innate power. Major second, Doom. Rage views Doom as stultifying. Doom is what the Rage player most primarily rages against. Major sixth, Void. Rage views Void as enervating. There is nothing that removes the wind from Rage's sails like ambiguity. Uncertainty and doubt are poisons. Equius is the only person Gamzee never bests and gets under Gamzee's skin. Major third, Space. Rage views space as cruel and tragic. Space is the source of rage and anger. It is where the buck stops. Every injustice can be traced to resources and real space. Kanaya saws Gamzee in half. Major 7, Mind. Rage views mind as alluring and manipulable. Rage uses mind like a tool, shaping and making them malleable, then discarding them. A single mind is worth little. Gamzee and Terezi's relationship is a one-sided affair, with Gamzee taking advantage. Tritone, Hope. Rage views hope as a farce. A joke is the man who hopes hope is in the action. The Grand High Blood kills Dual Scar without a shred of mercy. Minor second, Breath. Rage views breath as alluring and idealistic. Breath's effortless freedom is addictive to the rage-bound. Gamzee has a crush on Tavros, based on very few interactions. Minor sixth, Life. Rage views life as a useful resource. In Rage's conquest, life is a force of great power, but only when put to use. Her imperious condescension in the Grand High Blood. Minor third, Light. Rage views light as heretical. Predict the future, gain knowledge, gamble on uncertain luck, pointless endeavors in a subjective reality. Minor seventh, Time. Rage views time as overarching and awe-inspiring, but cruel. Time is the great healer. Time changes things. Rage wants to change things. Gamzee serves Lord English, but is enraged by Dave. Kurlos too serves Lord English. Rage and time are intertwined. Perfect fourth, Heart. Rage views heart as disposable and fickle. Why follow one's heart when they can follow a maddened crowd or worship an esoteric god? The heart betrays. Gamzee kills Nepeta with a smile on his face. Kurlos is Mulin's lover, but his designs far eclipse his affection. Rage struggles with committing to people over ideas. Unison, Rage. Rage views rage as tragic. Woe is he who gives his life to serve the higher purpose. Substance abuse, neglect, and self-loathing plagued the rage-bound. Gamzee cares little for his ancestor, and after his ultimate breakdown cannot face himself.
Blood. Perfect fifth, Doom. Blood views doom as certain and regrettable. As said, blood pushes against entropy and against doom, but it does not hate doom. Karkat and Solix are close, but prone to bickering. Major second, void. Blood views void as creepy and weird. Void does not constitute anything worth discussing. It is not material reality, by definition. Karkat and Equius don't talk much, but when they do, there is a palpable disconnect. Major sixth, space. Blood views space as frustrating but alluring. Space, in its vastness, creates the material conditions blood is bound to. Space is immovable and real. Karkat puts Jade and Kanaya on a pedestal in some sense, deferring to them. The Dolorosa cares to the signless, for he would not exist without her. Major third, mind. Blood views mind as insipid but useful. Mind's constant prattling are like nails on a chalkboard to blood, but mind's theories and ideas prove inevitably useful. Karkat has a deep trust of Terezi, but he often argues with her, usually to his own embarrassment. Major seventh, hope. Blood views hope much like light, insipid realism. Though Blood seems to think it can bring hope back to reality, Karkat acts as the voice of reason for Aridin and his girl troubles. Both Blood and hope can be kind of weenies. Tritone, breath. Blood views breath as frustrating and quixotic. Breath spends its time detached and free when Blood attempts to be tied down. Karkat is frustrated by John's carefree attitude, but the duo work towards the same goals. Theirs is a difference only in philosophy, not of means or ends. Minor second, life. Blood views life as a curse. Life is a great stage upon which is played the theater of cruelty. Life is pain and suffering. Blood players don't hate being alive, but they do hate life. The sufferer and the Condess are the main conflict of the story of the Dancestors. Minor sixth, light. Blood views light as annoying and unnecessary. Needless optimism has no place among Blood's pragmatism. There is no way to bring the Lightbound back to Earth, so Blood doesn't bother. Karkat concedes authority to Vriska during the late stages of the comic and does not bother with her. Minor third, time. Blood views time as inextricable and cruel. Blood trades in bonds and responsibility. It attempts to stem the tide of entropy and cannot stand its crushing weight. Karkat is constantly enraged by Dave, though he is fixated upon him. Minor seventh, heart. Blood views heart as alien yet comforting. Literally speaking, the heart is the vessel for the blood. The blood serves the heart. The blood, then, can never know its container. Karkat seems to understand Nepeta has a crush on him, but keeps her at arm's length. The sufferer and the disciple engage in a love that transcends the quadrants. The porcupine's dilemma. Perfect fourth, rage. Blood views rage as sympathetic and misguided. Rage is Blood's instincts in a pure form, emotion distilled into wild acts. Karkat views Gamzee as a bro, but a bro in need of being pacified. This relationship is unstable. Unison, blood. Blood views blood as enraging and stultifying. Like breath, blood does not know itself, but unlike breath, it is not for lack of trying. Blood players undergo incessant and maddening introspection to the point that the drama boils over from inside themselves to outside. Karkat argues with his time clones. Cankry infuriates anyone who bothers to listen, and the sufferer's convictions earn him death. Blood uniquely hates itself in fractal. Doom. Doom views void as strange but inevitable. Void is the end result of doom. If time becomes doom, then doom becomes void. Solix and Equius, in spite of several mutual friends, do not speak significantly. They accept their place. Major second, space. Doom views space as vapid and pointless. Space is merely the arena in which doom will be enacted. If a tree falls in the forest, and there is no one there to hear it, does it make a sound? Doom and space do not have significant overlaps. Kanaya hassles Solix in their first ever Pesterlog. Major sixth, mind. Doom views mind as meddlesome and irritating. Why bother deciding course if the end is charted? If it isn't broken, don't fix it. Solix and Terezi don't get along well and are embroiled as bystanders in a cycle of vengeance. When they do talk, it's all business. Major third, hope. Doom views hope as its most beautiful enemy. Hope is not for the doom-bound. Why hope for anything when the only ending is death? Inevitability invalidates hope. Solix and Eridan despise each other. Cronus and Machuna are incapable of constructive discussion. They are incompatible. Though tenuous, Aerosol, who is equal parts doom and hope, hates himself and in turn hate Jake. Major 7th, breath. Doom views breath as pointless and distant. Why worry about where life may take you when we all know where it ends? There are no significant relationships between doom-bound and breath-bound. Tritone, life. Doom views life as idealistic, yet cruel. Life is the thing that ends when Doom's inevitability comes to pass. As such, life is the thing Doom strives to derive meaning from. This can be idealistic. Solix and Pfeffery are confidants and friends. This can be cruel. The psionic is the slave battery to the Condus. Doom is of utility to life, for better or worse. Minor 2nd, light. Doom views light similarly to mind, meddlesome and dangerous. There is no fortune in a zero-sum game. Solix regards Vriska with mocking hostility. He doesn't care. Minor 6, time. Doom views time as ever-present and progressing. Time is the force moving the world towards its inevitability, the servant to Doom. Solix and Aradia are close friends and implied lovers, and are never shown engaging in significant arguments. Minor 3rd, heart. Doom views heart as vital and important. If Doom seeks meaning through endings, heart creates these meanings to be ended. The psionic and the disciple were both followers of a doomed cult to the sufferer. Minor 7th, rage. Doom views rage as unfettered and chaotic. Chaos is value neutral to the doom-bound. Let rage wild out, who cares? Perfect 4th, blood. Doom views blood as mystifying and frustrating, but necessary. Blood is the bond that gives existence meaning, though blood refuses to acknowledge inevitability. Karkat and Solix are bros, but they're always bickering. Unison, Doom. Doom views Doom as completely singular. Endings cause meanings. Nihilism is not an existential threat to the Doom-bound. While there are no conversations from Doom-bound to Doom-bound, all Doom-bound seem to have a strong sense of identity and purpose. Void. Perfect 5th, space. Void views space as... oh wow. The stars in the night sky. Have you ever noticed how beautiful they are? So distant but beautiful. Roxy is inspired by Callie. So much mystery. Major 2nd, mind. Void views mind as there's a lot going on there. Just a lot of moving parts. Let me put it this way. Why play chess when you can play checkers? Why play checkers when you can play tic-tac-toe? Rules don't matter as much as you think they can be, but they can be fun. Rules aren't supposed to be fun, but that's all they can be. Major 6th, hope. Void views hope as... this guy has fucking problems, dude. I'm serious. This guy's weird. I don't know what his problem even is. Like, I get it. I do. He wants good stuff, don't we all? But he's so obsessed with it. Like, you know? Roxy and Jake are occasional half-baked rivals, but they get along. Major 3rd, breath. Void views breath as, well, que sera, sera. Breath understands Void. They get along. It's the same thing with different inertia. Roxy likes John right away. Easygoing. Major 7th, life. Void views life as... basically, you need to stop putting shit in boxes. Things shouldn't be all set up and regimented. It doesn't matter. No matter how you arrange it, it's the same stuff and will be forever. Meaningful change is an illusion. Why can't you see that? Roxy and Jane try to reconnect, but end up talking about different things. There's also Roxy and Fafetta. Tritone, light. Void views light as, kind of bright. Turn that down. We don't need all that light. Light is only good for hurting your eyes, but I guess it's fun to chat about philosophy, you know? Rose and Roxy get along just fine. They're sisters, so are Void and Light. Some Light players, though, Like Roxy and Arania? Ugh. Minor second, time. Void views time as it's what keeps going. Gotta have time, you know? Equus views Aradia as necessary and compelling, enough to make her a robot body. Time is stuff moving around. Minor sixth, heart. Void views heart as... oh God, this guy. I love this guy, but holy shit, man, this is... no, they've got all their shit all mixed up. Equus loves Nepeta, but doesn't understand her. Roxy loves Dirk, but doesn't understand him. They need to get their poop in a group, you know? There is Fefeta Sprite. Dear sweet Fefeta. Minor third, rage. Void views rage as... oh, this guy. Funny guy. Oh. You better kill me in one shot, rage. Minor seventh, blood. Void views blood as... yeah, maybe. Maybe that blood stuff, maybe not. Is it really gonna matter in the end? It might. It might not. It mattering doesn't matter. You know? Perfect fourth, doom. Void views doom as... well, yeah, doom. You know? Obviously, doom. Doom is there. Doom is the coleslaw at the cookout, you know? It's there. Just accept it. It's whatever. Unison. Void. Void views void as... well, it's there. It's there not being there. Its non-existence is proof positive. It's the paradox that undergirds the universe, man. Void is because it isn't. It's the paradox you meet and say, okay, sure, and move the fuck on. Void knows what it is and what it isn't, and it's everything and nothing and vague and defined, and it's void. You know when you see it. You know when you don't see it. Space. Perfect fifth, mind. Space View's mind is surreal and fascinating, like a bug in a jar. Mind's facade cannot pierce space's observant gaze. When Porum and Latula speak, Porum insists Latula drop her rad girl affect. Major second, hope. Space View's hope is distant but idealistic. Space is materialistic but fundamentally optimistic, so hope has a distant appeal. The glass is half full. Jake and Jane correspond, but only from a great distance. Same with Jake and Grandma. Kanaya doesn't appreciate Eridan's flirtations, but does humor him. Major 6, breath. Space View's breath is idealistic and beloved. Space and breath share a go-with-the-flow vibe, but space seems to be more rooted in the pragmatic. Jade and John are friends. Major 3rd, life. Space View's life is necessary cohorts. Life and space have many spheres in common, such as fertility and the continuation of species. They are dispassionate friends. Jane and Jade work together in the service of a greater life player, the Condus. Major 7th, light. Space View's light is cerebral and confusing, but ultimately beautiful. Predicting the future must not seem necessary to someone who deals in slow progress. Rose and Jade get along, but seldom chat. Kanaya drops affection for Vriska when she doesn't reciprocate. Then again, there's Rose and Kanaya who enter a relationship. Even so, Kanaya seems always to be trailing behind Rose's shenanigans. Tritone, time. Space View's time is whimsical and lovely, however cruel. Time is the force acting upon space. It is the partner in the cosmic dance. It's also the ultimate entropic destructive force. Jade and Dave are close friends who work together intimately, whereas Calliope and Caliborn are sworn bitter rivals of an irredeemable species. Porum seems to be the only person who cares about Damara of their group, even if it's unclear how Damara feels about this. Minor second, heart. Space View's heart as overwrought. For space, who is defined by its material conditions, it can't understand the pining nature of heart. Minor sixth, rage. Space View's rage is fucking insufferable. As a repressive force, space doesn't like rage or the way it acts out. Kanaya kicks Gamzee off a building and saws him in half one time. They don't get along. Minor third, blood. Space View's blood is frustrating but necessary. Space tries to impose restrictions on blood and corral blood into being fucking reasonable for once. Jade can only stand Karkat when Karkat is being normal. This is similar to Kanaya and Karkat, as well as the Dolorosa and the Sufferer. They have a nurturing instinct. Minor 7, Doom. Space views doom as tragic but useful. Space's works and progress are inevitably undone by doom, but doom is a viable path forward. The volcano's eruption gives way to new vegetation. Kanaya and SAHCon don't speak frequently, but when they do, Kanaya needs something. Perfect fourth, void. Space views void as beautiful but indecipherable. Space, seeing its opposite, pauses to contemplate the space within itself. Is void just more space? Is void something else? Space gets creeped out and thinks about something else. Unison. Space. Space views space as complicated. It's hard for space to meet space on its own terms. Jade doesn't understand her time-clone dream self. Kanaya and Jade eventually get along, but only after they're stymied by each other. Kanaya and Porum seem to be the only example of a positive space-space relation, mostly due to the fact that Porum has something to teach, namely Kanaya's vampire powers. A great wariness plagues the introspecting space player. Mind. Perfect fifth, hope. Mind views hope as aspirational but self-aggrandizing. Hope is a delusional force, and Mindbound despise this, but Mind can see Hope's great capacity for change. Major second, breath. Mind views breath as impractical and irritating. Breath is a freedom from constraint that Mind does not consider useful. Terezi and John don't get along to the point of her killing him. Terezi doesn't have many words for Tavros. Major 6, life. Mind views life as overarching and inert. Mind players are not concerned with changing systems, only analyzing them. Life is the construction of systems, which is uninteresting to the Mindbound. Major 3rd, light. Mind views light as poisonous. Light's luck and wild chance and appetite for knowledge give the meticulous Mind player a run for their money. All Mind and Light players are at odds. Major 7th, time. Mind views time as useful and straightforward, yet esoteric. Time is the vector by which the Mind acts, but its intricacies are lost upon Mind. Terezi and Dave get along well, and Aradia and Terezi were close, but they ended up being pawns in a sick game. Tritone, heart. Mind views heart as alien and strange. Heart is inscrutable to the mind. Emotion is inscrutable to reason. Even so, it sure is interesting. When Dirk appears as a brain ghost, Terezi begins to sniff him intrusively. Minor second, rage. Mind views rage as addictive and destructive. Mind players, in their staunch convictions, are drawn to other staunch convictions, but rage players most frequently do not meet Mindbound on their terms. See Terezi and Gamzee. Minor 6th, blood. Mind views blood as fickle and funny. Mindbound feel disconnected from emotions that blood deals so heavily in, but they still share common ground. Karkat and Terezi are antagonistic but close. Minor 3rd, doom. Mind views doom as intriguing but depressing. The mind is a playground, which will be gone when doom has its way. Terezi and SAHCon don't speak much, and when they do, it is utilitarian. Latula and Machuna are close, but they aren't speaking the same language. Minor 7th, void. Mind views void as funny and essential. Vagary and introspection are the playground of the Mindbound. Perfect 4th, space. Mind views space as ordinary, yet complex. A paradox. The world we live in is immutable, but full of multifaceted geometries. Unison, mind. Mind views mind as rational and stalwart. Mind players don't speak to themselves often, but they do have an overwhelming self-confidence. When that self-confidence is shattered, they shatter with it, like Terezi on the Meteor. They are their own North Star. Hope. Perfect 5th, breath. Hope views breath as an idealistic mirror. Breath is freedom, what hope craves. Breath achieves freedom, hope strives. Recognition of the self in the other. Jake and John don't speak much, but they resemble each other quite a lot. Major 2nd, life. Hope views life as confusing and attractive. Life is cool and sometimes sucks, and Hope doesn't really understand how to get different results from life. Jake and Jane, Eridan and Pfeffery. Major 6th, light. Hope views light as idyllic and fascinating, but intimidating. They unlock potential, but not in the way hope is used to. Light takes some of the fun out of the game of life. Arania and Jake's conversations end up one-sided and cringeworthy, and not on Hope's side. Major third, time. Hope views time as base and crass. For the idealist, time is a resource in short supply. Hope needs more, and there never is. Major seventh, heart. Hope views heart as cloying, but attractive. Hope isn't always satisfied with how it idealizes love versus how much it works out for them. Dirk and Jake, for instance. Also, Aridin pines for romance, which is Nepeta's sphere of expertise. Tritone, rage. Hope views rage as animalistic and crass. Rage takes what Hope believes and puts the rubber to the road, but rage has no concern over rightness and wrongness like Hope does. Minor second, blood. Hope views blood as stalwart and basal. Blood is the only one to buy into Hope's bullshit. Karkat is the only person sympathetic to Aridin, even a little, and Aridin immediately opens up to him. Minor six, doom. Hope views doom as antithesis. The great delusion of Hope is doom. How could it accept the other? Minor third, void. Hope views void as mysterious and wonderful. Hope's fascination is with possibility, and void's vague nature lets Hope run wild. Jake and Roxy are the only alpha kids who have no significant quarrel with each other. Minor 7, space. Hope views space as whimsical and fascinating. Space hides so many opportunities which are the currency of Hope players. Jade and Jake exchange letters, and Jake seems excited to meet her. When Aridin speaks to Kanaya, though, it is only to flirt with her and gain more knowledge about his crush Vriska. Hope's relationship seems a little one-sided. Perfect fourth, mind. Hope views mind as incomprehensible. Hope players are single-minded. They have very little patience for nuance. My way or the highway. Unison, hope. Hope views hope as... doesn't really view itself at all. The delusion of hope requires the Hope player to live off their own little world. There's no room for another guy up there. Aerosol, who is equal parts hope and doom, dislikes Jake, but refuses to engage with him, leading Jake to having a delusional impression of their non-friendship. Part 7. DC CODA, in which the bitch finally finishes up. Though this list was exhaustive, we made it. The door is now open. Analysis is ready to be made. New characters are waiting to be crafted. New stories are aching to be told. Due to the time constraints of this particular video, I was unable to explore more concepts like class or deeper concepts and vibes, such as the notion of chords and cadence. In the future, there will be more material on the topic, and if you're lucky enough to be in the future, you will be able to view these topics right now. This video began with a thorough explanation of the current scholarship surrounding aspects, and by the end I have posited my own, more comprehensive theory, but ultimately this material is not for the benefit of we, the philosophers and scholars, but you, the viewers, the creators, the writers, the story makers, for you to be inspired to either look inward and view something you love from a different perspective, or to look outward and be inspired to create fresh. I strive to be your muse. This material must have a purpose. If you'd like to spread the word or support me in my further endeavors, please do so at patreon.com. My blog is hosted for free on Patreon, so there's plenty of free stuff available outside of paid benefits. Once again, I hope everyone has a wonderful SAHCon. I know that SAHCon has been wonderful in recent years. Make sure to check out the music album. Someone actually had a biology panel, like following up my biology panel from a couple years ago. That was kind of cool to see. So I hope you all enjoy, and I hope you have a wonderful time. Happy SAHCon, and if you're in the future past SAHCon, well, SAHCon D's nuts. See you later.